Ancient DNA Elations, who are the legendary sea peoples, imagine a world connected by empires. A time of god-kings, golden masks, and colossal cities. For over 1,000 years, the great civilizations of the late Bronze Age had woven a web of trade, diplomacy, and power across the Mediterranean. You had the Egyptians on the Nile, the Hittites in their Anatolian fortress capital, the Mycenaeans in their Greek palaces. They were the global superpowers of their day, a club of mighty kingdoms whose rulers called each other brother, swapping letters on clay tablets and gifts of gold, lapis lazuli, and ivory. Their world seemed eternal, their power absolute. The greatest empires of the age vanished. An age of heroes gave way to a dark age, and for 3,000 years, one name has been whispered from the ruins, a name given to them by their last great victim, the Egyptians. They called them the Sea Peoples. History has long painted them as the ultimate villains, the barbarian horde that brought civilization to its knees. But their true identity, their origins, their motives, all of it remained one of history's greatest mysteries. Who were they? Where did they come from? And how could they possibly bring down an entire world? Until now, ancient DNA has been unlocked, and with it, the secrets of the Sea Peoples are finally coming to light. And what the evidence reveals is a story far more complex, surprising, and human than we ever imagined. The legend of the destroyers. To get the legend of the Sea Peoples, you have to travel to Egypt, to the west bank of the Nile at Luxor. Here stands the colossal mortuary temple of the last great warrior pharaoh, Ramesses III. We know it today as Medinet Habu. Now, this wasn't just a temple. It was a monument to a king's victory, a stone billboard designed to broadcast his greatness for all time. Standing before these inscriptions, you can almost hear the pharaoh's propagandists at work. No land could stand before their arms. The inscription boasts, naming a roll call of the fallen: Hatti, Khod, Kakamish, Arzawa, and Alatia. All of them, from the mighty Hittite Empire to the island of Cyprus, were snuffed out one by one. The inscription describes a human tidal wave crashing towards the last bastion of civilization, Egypt. They were coming forward toward Egypt. The text continues, while the flame was prepared before them. Their confederation was the Peliset, Jeker, Shekelesh, Denyen, and Weshesh. Lands united. These names are the heart of the mystery. The Peliset, the Jeker, the Shekelesh. Who were they? The Egyptians offer no origin story. They just appear on the historical stage, fully formed and seemingly hell-bent on destruction. The reliefs carved alongside the text give these phantoms a face. We see them in the chaos of battle. One group is instantly recognizable, wearing distinctive feathered or fluted helmets, carrying round shields and long swords. These are the Peliset, the people who would one day give their name to Palestine, the Philistines. Another group, the Shurden, are even more striking, depicted with horned helmets like something out of a Wagnerian opera. Curiously, we'd met the Shurden before. For decades, they had served Egypt as elite mercenaries, the king's own trusted bodyguard. Now, it seemed, some of their kinsmen had turned against their former employers. The temple walls show the climax, 2 epic battles, one on land, and one at the mouth of the Nile. The naval battle is a frenzy of action. Egyptian ships clash with the high-prowed vessels of the Sea Peoples. We see Shurden warriors fighting for Egypt against other Shurden in the enemy coalition. On land, the story is just as dramatic. But the reliefs show something else, something that complicates the picture of a simple invading army. They show families. Women and children, loaded into heavy, solid-wheeled ox carts, are right in the middle of the land battle scene. This wasn't just a raiding party. This was a people on the move. He boasts of slaughtering the invaders and turning them to ash. Egypt had survived. The pharaoh had saved civilization. At least, that was the official story. It was a simple, compelling narrative. A mysterious, violent horde emerges from the sea, wipes out every other great empire, and is stopped only at the gates of Egypt. But even within the pharaoh's propaganda, They were clues hinting at a much deeper reality, the presence of women and children. The familiar faces of former mercenaries, the list of diverse peoples. The official story was clean and simple, but the truth was about to get messy. If the Medinet Habt inscriptions were the opening chapter, the second would be written not in ink, but in ash, rubble, and ruin. To find the Sea Peoples, archaeologists followed the trail of destruction Ramesses III laid out. They started digging, and what they found was a chilling confirmation: an entire world had been violently put to the torch. For 500 years, this was the capital of the Hittites. Around 1200 BCE, it was gone. Excavations revealed a city systematically destroyed by fire. In the ruins of the Royal Archive, where tens of thousands of clay tablets documented Hittite life, archaeologists found the final, desperate letters of a dying empire. Baked hard by the inferno that consumed the city, they speak of massive grain shortages and enemy ships off the coast. Then, the letters stop. The mighty Hittite Empire vanishes from history. The Sea Peoples were suspect number one. From there, the trail of chaos leads south to the cosmopolitan port city of Ugarit, in modern Syria. Ugarit was the Singapore of its day, a bustling hub of commerce, and it was a city that saw its end coming. In the burned ruins of one building, archaeologists found clay tablets that had been in a kiln, ready for firing, when the city was attacked. They are a snapshot of Ugarit's last hours. One letter, a desperate plea from the king of Ugarit to the king of Cyprus, is haunting. He writes, "My father, behold, the enemy's ships came here. The 7 ships of the enemy that came here inflicted much damage upon us. The king explains his army and fleet are away. The city is defenseless. He is utterly alone. We don't have the reply." Ugarit was violently destroyed shortly after, its streets covered in a thick layer of ash. The enemy ships were almost certainly part of the Sea Peoples flotilla. From there, the trail leads into the Aegean and the world of the Mycenaeans, the legendary civilization of Homer's heroes. Around 1200 BCE, their great palace fortresses at Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos all fell. For a long time, the picture seemed clear. A wave of violent raiders swept across the sea. But as archaeologists dug deeper, they found clues that didn't quite fit. The clues were found in humble pottery. In the layers of ash and ruin, a new and distinct style began to appear, what archaeologists called Mycenaean IIC. One beware. It was related to the pottery of Mycenaean Greece, but it was often locally made. This wasn't just trade. This was evidence of potters, trained in an Aegean tradition, now living and working in Cyprus and the Levant. This became even clearer with the Philistines. In the cities that would become their heartland, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron archaeologists found a dramatic cultural shift right around 1175 BCE. A beautiful and distinctive new style of pottery appeared, known as Philistine Bikram ware. It blended Aegean shapes with local Canaanite and Egyptian designs. It was a perfect fusion of cultures. The evidence went beyond pottery. Different architectural styles, new burial practices, and even a new diet with a lot more pork. These weren't the calling cards of pirates who just raided and left. This was the archaeological footprint of a new people settling down. They were migrants. The problem was, the clues pointed in multiple directions. The pottery looked Aegean. Some armor, like the horned helmets of the Sheridan, had parallels in Sardinia. Other elements suggested Anatolia. This created a fierce academic debate. Were the Sea Peoples Mycenaean Greeks? Sardinian warriors, displaced Anatolians? It had brought us closer to the truth, but the central mystery remained. They needed a way to make the people themselves talk. And remarkably, science was about to invent one. But before we get to the science, we have to ask a deeper question. Why was this world so fragile? As scholars looked closer at the world of 1200 BCE, they began to see that the cracks were everywhere. The late Bronze Age world wasn't just attacked. It was already falling apart from the inside. The very name of the age, the Bronze Age, points to its fatal flaw. The major sources for the entire eastern Mediterranean were thousands of miles away, in what is now Afghanistan. As raids and instability disrupted the sea lanes, the supply of tin faltered. It was a domino effect. No tin, no bronze. But that was only one factor in what many scholars now call a systems collapse. Paleoclimatologists have analyzed evidence from lake beds and caves, and their findings point to a period of severe, prolonged drought that gripped the eastern Mediterranean starting around 1250 BCE. The letters found in the ruins of Ugarit and Hattusa are filled with desperate pleas for grain. A drought of this magnitude would have been catastrophic, leading to crop failure, famine, and forcing entire populations to migrate in search of food and water. As if that weren't enough, there's strong evidence for earthquakes. Archaeologists have proposed the theory of an earthquake storm, a sequence of major quakes that rocked the region between 1225 and 1175 BCE, pointing to earthquake damage at cities like Mycenae. An earthquake could cripple a city, toppling its walls and leaving it fatally vulnerable. The trade routes for vital metals are cut. Now, imagine in this moment of supreme vulnerability, you look out to sea, and you see a fleet of strange ships on the horizon. This reframes the entire question: were the sea peoples the ones who lit the match that burned down the Bronze Age world? They were almost certainly a symptom of the Great Unraveling, not its sole cause. The stage was set for a new kind of investigation, one that could finally give these phantoms a home by looking not at their pottery, but at their very bones. The revelation, written in the bones for more than a century, the debate over the sea people's origins was stuck. The Egyptian text gave us a name, but no location. The archaeology gave us a trail of destruction, but the clues pointed everywhere. To break the deadlock, scholars needed evidence that could speak directly across the millennia, something every migrant carries with them, their DNA. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, scientists developed the incredible ability to extract and sequence ancient DNA from human remains thousands of years old. It was like discovering a biological time machine. The mystery of the sea peoples was a perfect test case. The breakthrough came from the ancient port city of Ashkelon, on the coast of modern-day Israel. For 30 years, an expedition painstakingly excavated the site, which was one of the 5 great cities of the Philistines, the group the Egyptians called the Peliset. Crucially, they discovered the city's cemeteries. For the first time, they had a large collection of human remains spanning the exact moment of transition before the Philistines arrived, the first generation of settlers, and the later population. It was a perfect genetic timeline. A team of geneticists, led by researchers from the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History, got access to these remains. After years of painstaking work, they succeeded, and their findings, published in 2019, sent shockwaves through archaeology. They had solved a huge piece of the puzzle. First, they analyzed the DNA of the people who lived in Ashkelon before the Philistines. As expected, their genetic profile was consistent with local Levantan populations. No surprises there. Then came the moment of truth. They sequenced the DNA from the remains of 4 infants, buried in the earliest Iron Age layers, the children of the very first Philistine arrivals. Their DNA told an unambiguous story. A new and significant ancestral component had appeared, one that was not present before, a European-related genetic signature. The team found that these individuals derived a significant portion of their ancestry from a European source. This wasn't just cultural influence, it was people crossing the sea and bringing their genetic heritage to a new land. But where in Europe? The science could go even further. The results showed that the closest genetic matches weren't to a single place, but to a broad area of southern Europe. The best-fitting models for this new ancestry pointed to the Aegean, specifically Crete, Sardinia, and even Iberia. This made perfect sense of the tangled archaeological clues. The Mycenaean-style pottery, the Sardinian-style weapons, it all clicked. The migrants who were settled Ashkelon weren't a single tribe, but likely a mixed group of people from various homelands across the Mediterranean. Now, it's critical to be precise here. This amazing evidence is for the Philistines, the Peliset. We still don't have direct DNA evidence for the other groups mentioned by the Egyptians, like the Jeker or the Shekelesh. This is a giant piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture, but the DNA had one more secret to reveal. The team then analyzed DNA from individuals buried in Ashkelon a couple of centuries later. They found that the distinct European genetic signal had been significantly diluted back into the local Levantan gene pool. This finding was profound. It didn't point to a story of conquest and replacement, but one of assimilation and integration. The Philistine newcomers had begun intermarrying with the local Canaanite population. This wasn't an overnight process. Recent studies show the assimilation was gradual, but within a handful of generations, they had become a hybrid people, both genetically and culturally. This perfectly explains why Philistine pottery started incorporating local designs over time. The newcomers and the locals had become one. This incredible evolution in our understanding, reading a story written in human bones 3 millennia ago, is a testament to the power of modern science and patient research. These breakthroughs are the result of decades of work in the field and in the lab. And just as this channel is dedicated to bringing you the latest on our evolving past, there are amazing platforms dedicated to sharing this kind of deep knowledge. That's why I'm excited to partner with Magellan, a documentary streaming service that is a history lover's dream. If you enjoyed this dive into the Bronze Age collapse, Magellan has a huge library covering this era and so much more. You can explore films like The Ancient Mind, which looks into how these early civilizations thought, or Decoding the Great Pyramid, which unravels Egyptian mysteries. Unlike other services, Magellan is all about documentaries, cinematic, informative, and with no ads. If you love the stories we tell here, you will feel right at home. By signing up with the link below, you get access to thousands of incredible films and directly support our channel, allowing us to keep making content just like this. So, check them out and tell them we sent you. Now, with this powerful genetic key in hand, we can finally step back and piece together a new story of the Sea Peoples. A new history, migrants, raiders, and survivors. The DNA evidence from Ashkelon acts as a Rosetta Stone, allowing us to reread all the other clues in a new light. The boastful Egyptian inscriptions, the scattered pottery, the context of a world racked by climate change, it all clicks into place, forming a new, more human history. First, we can say with certainty that the Sea Peoples were not a single group at all. The term is a modern invention for the diverse enemies listed in Egyptian records. The DNA confirms what the archaeology hinted at. This was a multi-ethnic, multicultural phenomenon. It was a coalition of the desperate. So, who were they? Looking back at the reliefs at Medinet Habu, we're no longer seeing a mysterious, uniform horde. We're seeing a snapshot of a Mediterranean world in turmoil. We're seeing Mycenaean Greeks, their own palace civilization in ashes, taking to the seas. We are seeing people with roots in Sardinia and the broader Aegean, some continuing their tradition as mercenaries while others joined the migration. We are likely seeing people from Cyprus, Sicily, and the coasts of Anatolia. They were a loose confederation of the displaced and dispossessed, forged in the crucible of a collapsing world. This forces us to re-examine the Egyptian narrative. Ramesses III, for his own political gain, presented the Sea Peoples as a unified conspiracy, a single enemy he could heroically defeat. This was almost certainly propaganda. It's far more likely he was facing chaotic and desperate movements of people over several years. Some of these groups were undoubtedly violent raiders, but others, as the ox carts with women and children show, were whole communities on the move, migrant families searching for a place to farm, their swords drawn as much for self-defense as for conquest. With this new perspective, the Sea Peoples are transformed. They are no longer one-dimensional villains. They are both a cause and a symptom of the Bronze Age collapse. Their raids were undoubtedly a major destabilizing force. They delivered the killing blows to cities like Ugarit and were the final push that sent empires into the abyss. But they were on the move because their own homelands were suffering the exact same fate. They weren't the bringers of the apocalypse, they were among its first victims. They were the ones who experienced the droughts, famines, and earthquakes firsthand, and they made a rational choice to leave. They took to the sea because it was their only option. Their story is a timeless human one. When the world falls apart, people will do whatever it takes to save their families. Their survival simply came at the expense of the established powers that stood in their way. They weren't just destroyers, they were survivors. The echoes of the past, the journey to find the Sea Peoples, has taken us from the propaganda of a pharaoh, through the ashen ruins of fallen empires, and into the very building blocks of life. For centuries, they were history's greatest phantoms, blamed for the death of a world. Now, we can see them for who they really were. They were a diverse collection of real people: Greeks, Sardinians, Anatolians, and others caught in one of the greatest societal collapses in human history. The DNA evidence has not solved every piece of the puzzle. We have a remarkably clear picture for the Philistines at Ashkelon, but the precise origins of other groups like the Jeker or the Weshesh remain a mystery, waiting for new discoveries. But the revelation from Ashkelon has fundamentally changed the narrative. It has given us the story of a migrant people who traveled across the sea, settled in a new land, and, over a few generations, merged with the local population to create a new, hybrid culture. They are a powerful reminder that history is not a story of pure and static peoples, but a dynamic and endless process of migration, mixing, and reinvention. The Sea Peoples didn't just bring an end to the Bronze Age. Their descendants became the ancestors of new Iron Age cultures. Their legacy wasn't just destruction, but also resilience and assimilation. They survived the end of their world and helped lay the foundations for the new one that followed. For 3,000 years, their story was told only by their victims. Now, thanks to the science locked in their own bones, they are finally beginning to speak for themselves.